One thing when I was reading this though, and it's true of all Western religions, except, and there's the exception. You've got a father, mother, and you got sons. So you got a male, female, and a male, and there's no mention of a daughter. And you wonder, why? Even Christianity has that. There's the mother, father, the son, and the daughter's left out. And for like 2,000 years or more, up until around 400, right around 400 AD or Common Era, they were at the rites of Eleusinian rites, the rites with Persephone and Demeter, which was, a lot of feminists have latched onto as a mother-daughter thing and so forth. And it strikes me that because for me the main myth in my life has always been the Psyche and the Demeter and the Persephone myth, and that's what's always been missing, in most of the stuff I encounter in our culture and so forth. And for me, and I had this mapped out in my head better when I was thinking earlier in the day, and I didn't write it, but basically the sun is in terms of this cosmic view of things, the father and the mother are in heaven, and the son and the daughter would be the earthly expression of it, of whoever they were. And so Jesus was the expression of God, and so who was married to God? I remember I told you I was reading Joni Mitchell, and she said, she went to Sunday school and she was pretty precocious, and she looked at the teacher and she says, well, gosh, what was it? It had to do with Adam and Eve. So they had two sons, Cain and Abel, and one of them got married. And she said, well, who did she marry? Who did he marry? He said, there's only one woman. Yeah. And it so baffled the teacher that she just said, yeah. She never went back. You guys haven't even got your story straight yet. So anyway, the idea, in my mind, the feminine, the daughter, is meaning, because I look at it psychologically, whereas, and so the mother is life itself, and so when Persephone gets captured and abducted, what's happening is the darkness, and that's another issue, but the darkness has taken the light, a bit of the light, the daughter, and because without that light it has no meaning, so it has to capture. And if you think about it, our whole lives are sort of like the material has captured something, the light, and we have to find that daughter within ourselves to find meaning in our life. And it's very different than the sun, which has to do with this sort of salvation, but without the meaning, you can't individuate at all. There wouldn't be anything to salvate.
Yeah.
So
it's like Hitler, or not Hitler. Churchill was asked why he was supporting the arts in the British Museum during World War II, and he said, well, if we don't support the arts, what are we fighting for?
Anyway, that was my little side trip.
Well, interestingly, you bring that up, and there's the Axiom of Maria, which apparently is mentioned in paragraph 672.
Of what?
Answer to Job. That's the big book we're working for in February. Answer to Job, paragraph 672. Jung is talking about the axiom of Maria. One becomes two, two becomes three, Out of the third comes the one as the fourth. Then presumably you start all over again. That's my sidelight. So there's a one has to have another of the opposite sex, and so they become two, and then two becomes three, a child, and then once the child is born, you have the one again, which is the family, right?
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I think it just like how cells form.
Pardon?
Like how cells form. One splits into two, and then becomes three, and then that could become a.
Right, and then they go faster, right? Because they split out, but it's all based on the axiom of Maria, which is one becomes two, two becomes three. Now you have a baby. Now something else is happening. Okay, which is another one becomes two, two becomes three. And so that something else is the fourth thing, right?
Is that like the Mandelbrot?
Well, probably there will be a connection to the Mandelbrot, I bet. Okay, Bill, carry on, please.
And thereon I snatched the pearl, and turned to the house of my father. Their filthy and unclean garments I stripped off, and left in their country. To the way that I came, I betook me. That's an interesting way to say it. From whence I came, I betook me. To the light of our house, to the dawn land, on the road I found there before me, my letter that had aroused me. As with its voice it had aroused me, so now with its light it did lead me. The letter is, oh, that's me. I forgot to capitalize that. But, maybe not. Well, maybe I did. It's, anyway, the letter has become the knowledge, and he knows where to go. So on the fabric of silk and letter of red, which is the letter, I'm losing track of where I am, with shining appearance before me, and even the translator put these
Question
put
mark.
question marks there, so
Yeah.
he was confused too. Encouraging me with its guidance, with its love, it was drawing me onward.
So it's the letter that's drawing him onward.
Right.
Right.
So
And
that's the message from the God, so to speak,
Right.
that came down and gave him the wisdom to.
And so in our lives, it's the letter is the voice that we hear within ourselves.
Right.
Right. Okay. And what
Could be the calling. It could be
the calling.
the voice. It could be the awakening.
Right. And so that's what Edinger's talking about in here, which is that you can tell this is a pure symbol because it keeps transforming itself. So it starts out as a letter from the god and goddess, right? And it turns into an eagle, which turns into a voice, which turns into something else. But it's all the same thing. And so it's communicating with us what the meaning of our life should be, okay? Which only each of us can determine what the meaning of our life should be, right? Go on.
So with its love, it was drawing me onward. I went forth through Sarbag. I'm just going to pronounce these anyway.
Okay, just go for it.
I can't.
I never heard of Sarbag.
Yeah. Well, look at the next one. I went forth through Sarbag. I passed. I left
Babylon, I think.
Babylon on my left hand, and I reached into Mashan the Great, the meeting place of the merchants that lieth hard by the seashore. The seashore being maybe a metaphor for the place of change in time, because it's where change is happening at an interface of water and land. Mm-hmm. My glorious robe that I stripped off, and my mantle with which it was covered, down from the heights of Hyrcania, thither my parents did send me. By the hands of their treasure dispensers, who trustworthy were with it trusted, without my recalling its fashion. In the house of my father, my childhood had left it, and once as soon as I saw it, the glory looked like my own self. So his mantle, his robes, he saw himself within them, and the fit perfectly because it was himself. He had come back to himself. He had individuated because even though he had gained through the individuation, he now recognized himself when he came back to the robe and the mantle, whereas before when he left it, he didn't see himself in it. He had to go away and come back. But if he didn't individuate, he wouldn't have recognized himself and he wouldn't even have seen them. I saw it in all of me, and saw me all in all of it, that we were twain in distinction, and yet again one in one likeness. I saw too the treasurers also, who unto me had down brought it. Were twain and yet of one likeness, the keepers of the wealth. For one sign of the king was upon them, who through them restored me the glory. And the glory being the understanding that surpasses all understanding.
Which is the experience that you've been selling us about Gnosis, right?
Yep.
Right.
He's awakened to his true self, yes.
Yes.
The pledge of my kingship, that was the end of it. Wait, I got lost.
So you said, parenthetically, we are each of us a complete cosmos, including all the aeonic emanations of the pleroma and the Supreme Being. All of it is within us if we can only remember.
Yes. And that's what I think he was talking about there. It restored me the glory, the pledge of my kingship. The glorious robe, all bespangled with sparkling splendor of colors, with gold and also with beryls. I don't know these words.
Yeah.
Iris-hued opals. Oh, question mark. See, they don't know either. with sards of varying colors. I thought it was shards.
Yeah, sure.
To match its grandeur, moreover, it had been completed. With adamantine jewels, all of its seams were off fastened. Moreover, the King of Kings' image was depicted entirely all over it. And as with sapphires above, was it wrought with the motley of color. I saw that moreover all over it the motions of Gnosis abounding. I saw it further was making ready as though for to speak, and I heard the sound of its music, which it whispered. I heard the sound of its music, which it whispered as it descended. Behold him, the active in deeds, for whom I was reared with my father. I too have felt in myself how that with his works waxed my nature. So he felt fulfilled by these works. In my mind, it was sort of he was having a poetic aesthetic experience, a resonance with the understanding, which was the music.
And he had fulfilled what his father had expected, what he had expected of himself, and what anyone else would expect in the future of him.
And now, with its kingly motions, was it pouring itself out towards me, and made haste in the hands of its givers, that I might take and receive it. And me too, my love urged forward, to run to meet it and to take it. And I stretched myself forth to receive it. With its beauty of color I decked me with my mantle of sparkling colors. I wrapped entirely all over me. I clothed me therewith and ascended to the gate of greeting and homage. I bowed my head and did homage to the glory of him who had sent it, whose commands I now had accomplished, and who had too done what he had promised. And there at the gate of his house, sons, I mingled myself with his princes. For he had received me with gladness, and I was with him in his kingdom, to whom the whole of his servants with sweet-sounding voices sing praises. He had promised that with him to the court of the King of Kings I should speed, and taking with me my pearl, should with him be seen by our King. This was a hymn by Judas Thomas the Apostle, which he spake in prison. The reason he spake in prison is because he went to India, and he basically seduced a nobleman's wife. Seduced her with religion. He converted her. And he didn't like that, so he threw him in prison. And so while he was in prison, another prisoner said, well, tell me a story. And this was the story he told him. And it's basically the story of Gnosticism, which is, the structure of the cosmos, or the psyche, and the task of everyone who lives, which is to individuate or find salvation, depending on.
Do you know where Thomas died? This is Doubting Thomas, by the way.
Is this the same one?
Yeah.
He died in India because.
Yeah, he died in Chennai, in old Madras. And in Madras is the Cathedral of Thomas. And in that cathedral, there's a relic, a part of his arm bone, apparently.
He got distributed right away, though.
Yeah, they yeah. He was a holy man, so everybody wanted a piece of him.
Oh my gosh. Now, was this translated from the Aramaic? Is that this?
God help us. That's a very convoluted translation
Isn't
compared to the one that's.
This was the worst, but it was the only one I could find for free.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so there are different. That's why I just went right to yours, because I looked online for.
Well, yeah, and mine, the one that I read, which I'll link to with this video, is in Edward Edinger's Ego and Archetype. And so, and what Edinger's point is that what this is the story of the emergence of the ego out of the archetype of the self. Okay, and so when you're born, you think you're God. Now, I mean, basically, you're wearing the coat of your purple dream coat that's made for you, right? And pardon?
Wasn't there a movie about that?
Color purple?
Yeah, but the point is, and Edinger's point here, which I think I can show you, is that it's the emergence of the ego. Actually, it's in the early part of this book. But, okay, so first, I'll just show this here. Okay, so in the beginning of life, the ego is subsumed under the self, and it has to gradually emerge. And if it emerges and you find the pearl of great price, right, then you get to midlife and you have to give that pearl meaning, right? And then you go back into the self with the pearl, which is what the ones that are in the pleroma are waiting to learn. What's been going on out there in the real world, you know?